There exists a language spoken only by those who understand that power is not seized through noise, but cultivated in silence. Throughout the corridors of history, in the chambers where empires were forged and kingdoms fell, a singular truth emerged from the observations of one who dared to strip away the comfortable illusions of morality to reveal the raw mechanics of human ascension. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine diplomat who witnessed the rise and fall of princes, understood something that most people spend their entire lives refusing to acknowledge. The world does not reward the virtuous for their virtue, nor does it punish the cunning for their calculation. Instead, it bows to those who master the silent rules that govern the hidden architecture of power, influence, and strategic positioning. While the masses chase visible symbols of success, believing that louder voices and bolder declarations will carry them forward, the truly intelligent move differently, speak differently, and ultimately win differently. What separates those who merely survive from those who genuinely rise is not talent, luck, or even opportunity, but rather their willingness to see the world as it actually functions rather than as they wish it would function. Machiavelli spent years observing the mechanisms by which some individuals transform themselves from obscurity into figures of undeniable influence, while others, despite possessing greater resources and advantages, found themselves perpetually outmaneuvered by more strategic minds. He discovered that success at the highest levels follows patterns that remain invisible to those who refuse to look beyond the surface narrative of fairness and justice. These patterns are not taught in schools, rarely discussed in polite company, and often actively denied by those who have already mastered them. For there is profound advantage in keeping the truly powerful principles hidden from those who might use them to challenge established hierarchies. The 8 silent rules you are about to discover are not moral guidelines designed to make you feel virtuous, nor are they motivational platitudes meant to inspire temporary enthusiasm. They represent the distilled essence of Machiavellian observation, the fundamental operating system that governs how intelligent individuals navigate the complex terrain of human competition, cooperation, and advancement. Each rule functions as a key that unlocks doors most people never even realize exist, doors that lead to positions of influence, respect, and autonomy that seem mysteriously out of reach for those who play by the conventional rules of engagement. Understanding these principles means accepting that the world operates according to laws that often contradict the comfortable stories we tell ourselves about merit, fairness, and the inevitable triumph of good intentions over strategic calculation. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of these rules is how consistently they have proven effective across centuries, cultures, and contexts, demonstrating that human nature remains remarkably constant despite superficial changes in technology, governance, and social organization. Machiavelli recognized that beneath the veneer of civilization lies a persistent reality. Humans respond to incentives, fear consequences, respect demonstrated capability, and ultimately align themselves with those who appear most likely to advance or protect their interests. Those who rise to positions of lasting influence understand this reality and structure their actions accordingly, not through manipulation born of malice, but through clear-eyed recognition of how social dynamics actually function when stripped of romantic illusions. The intelligent do not waste energy fighting against human nature. Instead, they harness its predictable patterns to create outcomes that serve their strategic objectives while maintaining the appearance of naturalness that prevents resistance from forming. What you are about to learn has remained hidden in plain sight, discussed in whispers among those who have internalized its power, denied by those who fear its implications, and misunderstood by those who mistake strategic thinking for moral deficiency. The difference between those who understand these rules and those who remain oblivious to them is not intelligence in the conventional sense, but rather the courage to perceive reality without the comforting filters that society installs to prevent most people from recognizing the actual mechanics of power. Machiavelli offers you a choice. Continue playing the game according to the rules you were taught, rules designed to keep you predictable and manageable. Or learn the silent principles that govern how the truly intelligent position themselves for inevitable ascension. The 8 rules await those brave enough to see beyond illusion and disciplined enough to apply what they discover with precision, patience, and unwavering commitment to their own strategic advancement. The first silent rule that separates the intelligent from the merely clever revolves around a principle Machiavelli observed repeatedly in the courts of Renaissance Italy: the strategic management of information asymmetry. While most people operate under the assumption that sharing knowledge freely demonstrates generosity and builds trust, those who rise understand that information represents the fundamental currency of power, and its value derives directly from its scarcity. The intelligent recognize that what others know about you, your intentions, your capabilities, and your limitations directly determines how they position themselves in relation to you. Therefore, the first rule demands that you become a master of selective disclosure, revealing only what serves your strategic interests while maintaining careful control over information that could be used to predict your actions, exploit your vulnerabilities, or diminish your perceived value in any given context. This principle does not advocate for dishonesty or deception, but rather for the sophisticated understanding that transparency itself can be weaponized against you by those who understand its strategic implications. Machiavelli observed that princes who revealed too much about their thinking, their fears, or their true capabilities found themselves surrounded by those who used that knowledge to limit, manipulate, or eventually replace them. The intelligent understand that mystery creates space for others to project their own fears, hopes, and assumptions onto you, which often works far more effectively to your advantage than any carefully constructed narrative you might deliberately communicate. When people do not fully understand your capabilities, they tend to overestimate them, attributing to you powers and insights you may not actually possess, but which serve you well as long as the ambiguity remains intact. The practice of information management requires developing what Machiavelli would recognize as a dual consciousness. One part of you participates authentically in social interactions, building genuine connections and demonstrating real competence, while another part constantly evaluates what information you are revealing, what conclusions others might draw from it, and whether those conclusions serve your long-term positioning. This is not paranoia, but strategic awareness, the recognition that every conversation, every disclosure, every moment of vulnerability creates data points that intelligent observers will use to construct a model of who you are, what you want, and how you can be influenced or contained. Those who rise make this calculation instinctively, filtering their communications through an awareness of how information flows through social and professional networks, who repeats what to whom, and how today's casual revelation becomes tomorrow's leverage point for others. The second dimension of this rule involves becoming an exceptional gatherer of information about others while revealing little about yourself, creating an asymmetry that positions you as someone who understands more than is understood about you. Machiavelli recognized that knowledge of others' motivations, fears, ambitions, and constraints gives you the ability to anticipate their actions, prepare appropriate responses, and position yourself advantageously before conflicts even emerge into open awareness. The intelligent develop sophisticated listening skills not out of therapeutic interest in others' feelings, but because every person you interact with inadvertently reveals the map of their internal world through their concerns, their questions, their reactions, and their priorities. These revelations allow you to construct accurate models of how they will behave under various circumstances, giving you a profound advantage in any competitive or cooperative endeavor. This information asymmetry must be maintained with subtlety, for people become defensive and withdrawn when they sense they are being studied or that you possess disproportionate knowledge about them while revealing little about yourself. The intelligent solve this problem through what might be called strategic reciprocity. They offer carefully selected personal information that appears vulnerable or revealing, but actually communicates exactly what they want others to believe, creating a false sense of intimacy and mutual disclosure that masks the actual asymmetry. Machiavelli understood that the appearance of openness often provides better cover for strategic reserve than obvious secrecy, which triggers suspicion and causes others to become guarded in ways that reduce the information flowing to you. The truly sophisticated practitioner of this rule appears transparent while remaining opaque, seems vulnerable while staying protected, and creates the impression of mutual understanding while maintaining superior awareness. The practical application of this first rule requires developing new habits around communication, particularly in an age where social media and digital connectivity create constant pressure to share, update, and reveal. Those who rise understand that every post, every comment, every digital footprint creates a permanent record that can be analyzed by anyone with patience and intelligence to discern patterns, predict behaviors, and identify vulnerabilities. They recognize that the compulsion to share achievements immediately, to broadcast opinions reflexively, and to document experiences publicly represents a massive strategic disadvantage, giving potential competitors and adversaries a comprehensive dataset about your thinking, your relationships, your resources, and your blind spots. The intelligent resist this cultural pressure, maintaining strategic silence about matters that do not serve their interests to reveal, even when such silence appears unusual in a culture that mistakes constant disclosure for authenticity. The ultimate mastery of this rule appears as a form of natural reserve that others interpret as depth, wisdom, or self-possession, rather than calculation or strategy. Machiavelli would recognize this as the highest form of the art. When your strategic information management becomes indistinguishable from admirable personal qualities, you gain the benefits of both perception and reality. People trust those who appear thoughtful rather than impulsive, who seem to possess hidden depths rather than wearing everything on their surface, who demonstrate the confidence that comes from not needing external validation through constant disclosure. By transforming a strategic principle into an apparently natural aspect of your character, you create a sustainable competitive advantage that does not require constant conscious effort to maintain, while simultaneously building a reputation that attracts opportunities, respect, and alliances from those who value substance over performance. The second silent rule that governs the rise of intelligent individuals centers on what Machiavelli understood as the imperative of appearing conventional while acting strategically. Throughout his observations of successful princes and failed nobles, he noticed a critical pattern: those who openly defied social norms and expectations, even when their defiance was strategically sound, found themselves isolated and eventually destroyed by coalitions of those who felt threatened by obvious nonconformity. Conversely, those who maintained the appearance of adherence to conventional values while pursuing their actual objectives with quiet determination faced far less resistance and often received active support from those who believed them to be allies of traditional order. The intelligent understand that society tolerates almost any actual behavior as long as the forms and appearances it values remain intact, but it mobilizes ferociously against those who challenge its comfortable illusions, regardless of the practical merit of such challenges. This principle requires a sophisticated understanding of the difference between substance and symbol, between what people actually care about and what they claim to care about, between the behaviors that genuinely threaten social order and those that merely offend sensibilities. Machiavelli observed that most social conflict arises not from actual divergence of interests, but from perceived violations of symbolic order, from actions that force others to confront uncomfortable truths about how the world actually functions, rather than how they prefer to imagine it functions. The intelligent learn to navigate this terrain by maintaining scrupulous respect for the symbols, rituals, and narratives that give people comfort, even while pursuing courses of action that would seem contradictory to those same symbols if examined too closely. This is not hypocrisy, but strategic sophistication, the recognition that human psychology operates on multiple levels simultaneously, and that managing perception often matters more than managing reality. The practical application of this rule involves developing what might be called a dual presentation strategy. Your public persona aligns carefully with the values, aesthetics, and expectations of the environment in which you operate, while your actual strategic thinking and decision-making follows principles that serve your interests regardless of their relationship to conventional wisdom. This requires careful attention to language, presentation, and framing, ensuring that even when you take actions that deviate from established patterns, you describe them using vocabulary and justifications that resonate with traditional values. Machiavelli would recognize this as essential political skill, the ability to make the novel appear familiar, the strategic appear moral, and the self-interested appear magnanimous through careful management of how actions are interpreted by those who observe them. The intelligence required for this rule lies not in manipulation, but in accurate understanding of which aspects of convention actually matter to people, and which represent mere habit or pretense that can be ignored without consequence. Most individuals waste enormous energy conforming to expectations that no one actually enforces or cares about, while simultaneously violating the few rules that truly govern social acceptance and advancement. Those who rise develop the discernment to distinguish between the two categories, maintaining perfect adherence to the forms that matter while ignoring those that do not, thus appearing more conventional than they actually are, while expending less effort on conformity than those who blindly follow all rules equally. This selective conformity creates the optimal balance. You gain the benefits of being perceived as a reliable, non-threatening member of your community while maintaining maximum freedom to pursue your actual objectives without interference. Machiavelli understood that this principle extends beyond mere behavior to encompass the narratives you construct about your motivations, intentions, and values. The intelligent become skilled at translating their genuine strategic objectives into language that resonates with the moral frameworks and belief systems of those they need to influence or secure cooperation from. When you seek to advance your position, you frame it as serving the organization. When you eliminate an obstacle, you describe it as upholding principles. When you accumulate resources, you present it as accepting responsibility. This translation process is not dishonest if the outcomes genuinely align, even if your personal motivations differ from the ones you emphasize in your public presentation. The key insight is that people evaluate your actions based on how those actions fit into their existing narrative frameworks. And by controlling the framing, you control the interpretation without needing to control the underlying reality. The mastery of this second rule becomes evident when others describe you using exactly the conventional terms and categories you have strategically cultivated, even while you systematically advance objectives that would seem to contradict those terms if your actual thinking were transparent. Machiavelli observed that the most successful princes were those who everyone believed represented traditional values and legitimate authority, even when their actual path to power had involved profound violations of those same values and legitimacy. The appearance of conventionality creates a permission structure for your advancement, as people feel comfortable supporting you precisely because they believe you will not disrupt the order they depend on for psychological security. By maintaining this appearance while pursuing your strategic objectives, you avoid the resistance that would inevitably arise if your true level of calculation and ambition were visible to those around you. The ultimate sophistication in applying this rule involves internalizing the conventional persona to such a degree that it becomes partially genuine, eliminating the cognitive burden of maintaining a facade and reducing the risk of inconsistency that might reveal the gap between appearance and substance. Machiavelli would recognize this as the transformation of strategic performance into authentic identity, where you actually come to embody many of the conventional values you initially adopted for strategic reasons, not because you were convinced of their inherent merit, but because the consistency this creates serves your interests better than maintaining a sharp division between public persona and private self. This integration represents the highest form of the art, where strategy and authenticity merge into a unified approach that others cannot deconstruct or attack without appearing to assault virtue itself. The third silent rule that intelligent individuals employ in their ascension revolves around what Machiavelli identified as the strategic cultivation of indispensability through unique capability rather than through effort or loyalty. In the competitive landscapes of Renaissance Italy, he observed a stark distinction between those who made themselves valuable through harder work or demonstrated dedication, and those who made themselves irreplaceable through possession of knowledge, skills, or relationships that others could not easily replicate. The former group, despite their genuine contributions, found themselves easily discarded when circumstances changed or when cheaper alternatives became available, while the latter commanded respect, resources, and security regardless of shifting conditions, because eliminating them created problems that decision-makers preferred to avoid. The intelligent understand that true power flows not from being needed, but from being difficult to replace, and they structure their capabilities accordingly. This principle requires a fundamental reorientation away from the conventional advice to work hard, demonstrate commitment, and prove yourself through consistent effort. While these qualities have value, they do not create strategic advantage because they can be replicated by anyone willing to invest similar time and energy. Machiavelli recognized that sustainable positioning requires developing competencies that exist at the intersection of genuine value creation and artificial scarcity, skills that matter to important objectives, but that relatively few people possess or can easily acquire. The intelligent identify these capability gaps in their environment and systematically build expertise in those specific domains, not necessarily because they find them inherently fascinating, but because mastery of them creates a negotiating position that transcends the simple exchange of effort for compensation. The identification of which capabilities to develop requires sophisticated environmental analysis and strategic thinking rather than following your passion or natural talents. Many individuals possess skills they enjoy and excel at, But these abilities often exist in domains where supply far exceeds demand, creating brutal competition and minimal leverage for those who possess them. Others develop expertise in areas that organizations claim to value, but do not actually depend on for their core operations, making such specialists vulnerable when resources become constrained. The intelligent study the actual dependency structures of their environment, identifying the capabilities that sit on critical paths to important outcomes that cannot be easily outsourced or automated, and that require tacit knowledge or relationship access that cannot be rapidly transferred to replacements. These represent the domains where developing deep expertise creates genuine indispensability rather than merely making you a valued contributor. Machiavelli would emphasize that this strategic capability development must be pursued quietly, without drawing attention to the fact that you are deliberately positioning yourself as irreplaceable. Organizations and leaders become uncomfortable when they recognize that someone has intentionally created a situation where they cannot be easily removed, as this awareness triggers defensive responses aimed at reducing such dependencies. The intelligent build their indispensability organically, taking on responsibilities and developing knowledge that others overlook or avoid, stepping into gaps that emerge naturally and only gradually revealing the extent to which important functions now depend on their unique contributions. By the time others recognize the dependency, it has become so deeply embedded in operational reality that addressing it would require more disruption than simply accommodating your continued presence and influence. The second dimension of this rule involves actively preventing the diffusion of your unique capabilities while appearing to be collaborative and generous with your knowledge. This delicate balance requires what Machiavelli would recognize as strategic sharing. You teach enough to be seen as a mentor and team player. You document enough to appear professional and responsible, but you maintain certain critical elements of your expertise as tacit knowledge that cannot be easily transferred through explicit instruction. This might involve complex judgment calls that require years of experience to make reliably, relationships with key stakeholders that depend on personal trust rather than formal roles, or understanding of intricate systems that you have invested time to master, but that exist nowhere in formal documentation. The intelligent identify which aspects of their value can be shared without diminishing their position, and which must be guarded, albeit subtly, to maintain their strategic advantage. The practical application of this principle requires patience and long-term thinking that many people lack in an era of rapid job changes and constant pursuit of new opportunities. Building genuine indispensability takes years of consistent investment in specific capability development, relationship cultivation, and gradual assumption of critical responsibilities. Those who rise understand that this investment pays dividends not in immediate recognition or compensation, but in the accumulation of leverage that eventually allows them to negotiate from positions of strength rather than always being subject to others' terms. Machiavelli observed that those who rushed from position to position, constantly seeking immediate advancement, never developed the deep roots that create real security and influence. While those who invested strategically in becoming irreplaceable in one context found that their reputation and demonstrated capability opened doors far more valuable than the lateral moves others were making. The mastery of this third rule becomes evident when organizations restructure themselves around your capabilities rather than attempting to replace you or work around your limitations. When your compensation and working conditions reflect the real cost of replacing you rather than market rates for your nominal position, and when you participate in strategic decisions not because of your formal authority, but because excluding you would create risks that decision makers are unwilling to accept. Machiavelli would recognize this as the achievement of actual power distinct from formal position. The kind of influence that persists through leadership changes and organizational turbulence, because it rests on genuine indispensability rather than on the temporary goodwill of specific individuals or the artificial structures of hierarchy that can be revised whenever convenient for those who control them. The fourth silent rule that governs intelligent ascension concerns what Machiavelli understood as the imperative of emotional opacity combined with sophisticated emotional intelligence. In observing the courts and councils of power, he noted a critical asymmetry between successful and failed leaders. Those who rose displayed their emotions selectively and strategically, maintaining composure under circumstances that caused others to reveal their true feelings and vulnerabilities, while simultaneously demonstrating acute awareness of the emotional states, triggers, and patterns of those around them. This combination created a profound advantage. They could anticipate how others would react under pressure, stress, or opportunity, while those same people found themselves constantly surprised by responses they could not predict, because the emotional landscape remained hidden behind a carefully maintained facade of calm deliberation. This principle extends far beyond simple stoicism or emotional suppression, which Machiavelli recognized as crude and ultimately unsustainable. True emotional opacity requires genuine internal processing that reduces reactive emotional responses while maintaining full awareness of emotional dynamics in yourself and others. The intelligent invest in developing what might be called emotional sovereignty, the ability to experience feelings without being controlled by them, to recognize emotional states as information rather than imperatives, and to choose deliberately how and when to display emotional reactions, rather than having such displays emerge spontaneously from internal states. This capacity transforms emotions from vulnerabilities that others can exploit into strategic tools that you deploy with precision when they serve your objectives. The development of emotional opacity begins with rigorous self-observation and pattern recognition regarding your own emotional triggers, habitual responses, and the physiological and cognitive changes that accompany different emotional states. Machiavelli would appreciate that this self-knowledge represents the foundation of emotional strategy. You cannot control what you do not understand, and most people move through life remarkably ignorant of the mechanical nature of their emotional responses, believing that feelings arise spontaneously and must be honored immediately through expression or action. The intelligent recognize that the gap between stimulus and response can be widened through practice and awareness, creating space for strategic choice about whether a particular emotional response serves your interests or undermines them in any given context. The complementary dimension of this rule requires developing highly sophisticated emotional intelligence regarding others, not for therapeutic purposes of understanding or supporting their well-being, but for the strategic purpose of predicting behavior and identifying leverage points. Machiavelli observed that most people are prisoners of their emotional patterns, responding to similar triggers in remarkably consistent ways, despite often claiming to be rational and thoughtful in their decision-making. Those who can accurately map these emotional patterns gain the ability to anticipate reactions, prepare appropriate responses, and even engineer situations that provoke predictable responses that serve strategic objectives. This is not manipulation in the sense of causing people to act against their interests, but rather the skilled management of emotional dynamics to create outcomes that align with your goals while remaining within the range of responses that people would naturally exhibit. The practical application of this principle involves creating what Machiavelli might call emotional asymmetry in your relationships and interactions, where you understand others more completely than they understand you, where you can predict their responses while remaining unpredictable yourself, and where you maintain composure while others become reactive and thus vulnerable to making errors in judgment or revealing information they would normally protect. This asymmetry emerges not from a single dramatic demonstration of emotional control, but from consistent patterns of behavior that establish you as someone who does not panic under pressure, who does not become defensive when challenged, who does not reveal vulnerability even when others are actively trying to provoke such revelation, and who seems to process information and make decisions through some internal mechanism that others cannot fully model or anticipate. Machiavelli would emphasize that this emotional opacity must be combined with strategic displays of emotion that serve specific purposes, not as genuine expressions, but as calibrated performances designed to create particular effects. Occasional demonstrations of anger establish that you have boundaries and are not to be taken lightly. Calculated displays of vulnerability create trust and connection when you need to build alliances. Expressions of enthusiasm or optimism can be deployed to energize others toward objectives that serve your interests. The key distinction is that these emotional displays are chosen rather than spontaneous, deployed with awareness of their strategic function rather than emerging uncontrollably from internal states. This requires the psychological sophistication to distinguish between genuine emotional experience, which you allow yourself to feel and process internally, and emotional expression, which you treat as a strategic resource to be deployed selectively. The mastery of this fourth rule becomes evident when others describe you as impossible to read, as someone who remains calm in situations that would cause most people to lose composure, and simultaneously as someone who demonstrates deep understanding of what others are feeling and thinking, even when they attempt to hide it. Machiavelli recognized that this reputation creates a psychological advantage in every interaction. People become more cautious and thoughtful in their dealings with you because they cannot predict your reactions or manipulate you through emotional tactics that work reliably on others, while you maintain the ability to understand and influence them through their emotional patterns. This asymmetry compounds over time as the consistent demonstration of emotional sovereignty attracts opportunities, responsibilities, and alliances that are reserved for those who appear capable of handling complexity and pressure without losing their strategic clarity. The fifth silent rule that separates intelligent ascenders from the majority revolves around what Machiavelli identified as the critical importance of controlling your timing rather than allowing circumstances to dictate when you act. In his observations of political and military leaders, he noted repeatedly that those who rose possessed an almost uncanny ability to know when to advance and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to commit resources and when to preserve them, while those who failed demonstrated poor temporal judgment, acting too quickly out of impatience or too slowly out of caution, thereby missing windows of opportunity or walking into traps that patience would have revealed. The intelligent understand that the same action taken at different moments produces radically different outcomes, and they invest enormous effort in developing the judgment necessary to distinguish between moments that demand immediate action and those that require strategic patience. This principle challenges the cultural narratives that celebrate constant action, rapid decision-making, and the appearance of decisiveness regardless of circumstances. Machiavelli recognized that such narratives serve those who already hold power by encouraging their potential rivals to act prematurely, revealing their intentions before they have sufficient strength to execute them successfully, and inviting coordinated resistance from those who see the threat emerging. The intelligent resist this pressure, understanding that premature action burns resources, reveals strategies, and often achieves nothing except the satisfaction of feeling like you are doing something, rather than strategically positioning yourself for the moment when action will actually prove decisive. They accept the discomfort of apparent inaction, the accusations of indecisiveness or lack of ambition, knowing that these temporary costs pale in comparison to the permanent damage caused by poorly timed initiatives. The development of superior timing judgment requires what Machiavelli would recognize as constant environmental scanning combined with historical pattern recognition. The intelligent study how similar situations have evolved in the past, identifying the signals that preceded significant shifts in power, opportunity, or constraint. They pay attention to subtleties that others miss, changes in how key individuals interact, shifts in resource allocation patterns, alterations in the rhetoric used by those who control important decisions, and countless other indicators that, when properly interpreted, reveal the underlying dynamics that will soon manifest in obvious ways. By the time most people recognize that circumstances have changed, those with superior timing judgment have already positioned themselves to benefit from the change or protect themselves from its negative effects. The practical application of this rule involves developing multiple options and maintaining flexibility rather than committing fully to any single course of action until the optimal moment for commitment becomes clear. Machiavelli observed that successful princes kept multiple irons in the fire, cultivating relationships with various factions, developing capabilities across different domains, and preserving resources that could be deployed in multiple ways depending on how circumstances evolved. This approach contradicts conventional wisdom about focus and commitment, but it creates the strategic flexibility that allows you to act decisively when the right moment arrives, rather than being locked into previously established positions that no longer serve your interests. The intelligent appear uncommitted or even indecisive to those who do not understand this strategy, but in reality, they are maximally positioned to exploit whatever opportunities emerge. The counterpart to knowing when to act is knowing when to wait, and Machiavelli understood that patience represents one of the most difficult and valuable virtues for those seeking to rise. Most people lack the psychological fortitude to maintain strategic patience when they see others acting, achieving visible results, and receiving recognition for their initiatives. The pressure to do something, to be seen as dynamic and proactive, causes premature action that dissipates energy and resources on initiatives that were never going to succeed because the timing was wrong. The intelligent develop the internal security necessary to wait through these periods, understanding that the person who acts first often loses to the person who acts at the right moment, and that conserving resources while others exhaust themselves creates compound advantages that eventually prove decisive. Machiavelli would emphasize that superior timing judgment also applies to the realm of reputation management and personal branding, knowing when to seek visibility and when to work in obscurity, when to take credit and when to deflect it to others, when to demonstrate capability and when to conceal it. Many talented individuals damage their prospects by peaking too early, by becoming visible before they have the capability to deliver on the expectations such visibility creates, or by demonstrating their abilities in ways that threaten those who currently hold power and who still have the capacity to suppress emerging rivals. The intelligent manage their ascent carefully, remaining under the radar until they have accumulated sufficient capability and positioned themselves in ways that make suppression more costly than accommodation, only then allowing their full competence to become widely visible. The mastery of this fifth rule becomes evident when others marvel at your apparent luck, how opportunities seem to appear at exactly the right moments, how your initiatives consistently succeed while similar attempts by others fail, and how you seem to avoid the pitfalls and setbacks that plague those around you. Machiavelli recognized that such supposed luck is actually the fruit of superior timing judgment combined with patient preparation, the result of investing years in developing the awareness necessary to recognize significant moments when they arrive and the discipline necessary to wait for them, rather than forcing action during periods when the conditions for success do not exist. This reputation for fortunate timing becomes self-reinforcing as people begin to associate you with success and seek you out for important initiatives, thereby creating even more opportunities for you to demonstrate and benefit from your superior temporal judgment. The sixth silent rule that governs intelligent ascension centers on what Machiavelli understood as the imperative of building dependencies rather than friendships, loyalty rather than affection, and strategic alliances rather than genuine community. Throughout his analysis of power relationships, he observed that those who rose and maintained their positions did so by making themselves useful to the right people at the right times, creating situations where their continued presence and support served the interests of those with resources and authority to advance them. Conversely, those who focused on being liked, on building warm relationships based on personal affinity, or on creating genuine bonds of mutual understanding, often found themselves valued as companions but not advanced as allies, appreciated but not empowered, included socially but excluded from the serious business of resource allocation and strategic decision-making. This principle requires accepting an uncomfortable truth about human relationships in competitive environments. People support you not because they like you, but because doing so serves their interests. And the most sustainable form of support flows from dependencies you have created, rather than from affection you have generated. Machiavelli recognized that personal liking is volatile, subject to mood changes, competing relationships, and the simple fact that people's feelings shift based on circumstances you cannot control. Strategic dependencies, however, remain stable as long as the underlying structure of mutual advantage persists, providing a far more reliable foundation for the alliances necessary to advance your position and secure your gains against those who would prefer to see you fail or remain subordinate. The development of strategic dependencies begins with careful analysis of what people with power and resources actually need, as distinct from what they claim to need or what you believe they should need based on abstract principles. Machiavelli would emphasize that this analysis requires setting aside your own preferences, judgments, and values to see the world from the perspective of those you seek to make dependent on you. What problems keep them awake at night? What metrics determine their success or failure? What capabilities do they lack that limit their effectiveness? What relationships would they benefit from having but cannot easily establish on their own? The intelligent identify these genuine needs and position themselves as the most reliable, most effective, or most discreet source for meeting them, creating a value proposition that transcends personal feelings and becomes embedded in the practical realities of how these individuals operate. The practical application of this principle involves a counterintuitive approach to relationship building. Rather than trying to make powerful people like you through charm, flattery, or social grace, you focus on making yourself useful to them in ways that others cannot easily replicate. This might mean developing expertise in areas they need but do not understand, maintaining relationships with individuals or groups they need to influence but cannot access directly, handling problems or tasks they find unpleasant or time-consuming, or providing honest counsel when everyone else tells them what they want to hear. Machiavelli observed that while many people can be charming companions, very few make themselves genuinely useful to those in positions of authority, and it is this usefulness, rather than likability, that creates the foundation for advancement and protection. The cultivation of loyalty rather than affection follows similar logic, but applies to your own team, subordinates, or those who work with you rather than for you. Machiavelli understood that affection is pleasant, but loyalty is durable, and that loyalty emerges not from warm feelings, but from clear mutual advantage, combined with demonstrated reliability and protection. The intelligent build loyalty by ensuring that those who align with them benefit tangibly from the relationship, by protecting their people from external threats, even at some cost to themselves, and by creating a reputation for reciprocity that makes betrayal strategically foolish for anyone who values their long-term interests. This approach generates far more stable and reliable support than attempts to be liked or to create a pleasant emotional atmosphere, which may feel good in the moment, but dissolves rapidly under pressure or when competing interests emerge. Machiavelli would emphasize that these strategic relationships must be maintained with careful attention to the principle of reciprocity. You deliver value consistently, you demonstrate reliability that justifies trust, and you never allow your dependencies on others to exceed their dependencies on you. The balance of dependency determines who has leverage in any relationship, and the intelligent manage this balance deliberately, ensuring that they provide enough value to be worth keeping around, but never so much that they become taken for granted or assumed to be available regardless of how they are treated. This requires the willingness to occasionally withdraw support or demonstrate that you have alternatives, not out of pettiness, but as necessary calibration to maintain the respect that underlies functional strategic relationships. The ultimate mastery of this sixth rule becomes evident when you have constructed a network of mutual dependencies that provides multiple pathways to resources, information, and opportunity, insulating you from the vulnerability of depending on any single relationship, while ensuring that numerous individuals with power and influence have concrete reasons to support your advancement. Machiavelli recognized that this network effect creates compound security and opportunity. Each relationship makes you more valuable to the others by expanding your access and capability, and the overall structure becomes self-reinforcing as people recognize that knowing you provides access to your entire network. This is the architecture of durable power, built not on the shifting sands of personal affection, but on the solid foundation of mutual strategic advantage that survives mood changes, competing loyalties, and the inevitable turbulence of competitive environments. The seventh silent rule that completes the framework of intelligent ascension addresses what Machiavelli identified as perhaps the most challenging dimension of strategic advancement: the necessity of occasionally acting against immediate moral intuitions in service of long-term objectives, while maintaining the psychological integrity necessary to avoid the self-destruction that typically follows such actions. Throughout his observations, he noted that those who rose to and maintained positions of significant influence invariably faced moments requiring decisions that contradicted their socialized moral frameworks, moments when conventional ethics demanded one response, while strategic necessity demanded another. Those who succeeded in these moments did so not by becoming amoral or cynical, but by developing a more sophisticated understanding of ethics that recognized context, consequences, and competing responsibilities, rather than applying simple rules regardless of circumstances. This principle represents the most controversial aspect of Machiavellian thought, often misunderstood as an endorsement of immorality or a rejection of ethical constraints altogether. Machiavelli's actual position was far more nuanced. He recognized that leaders bear responsibilities to outcomes and to the people depending on them that sometimes require actions which, judged in isolation, appear morally questionable, but which, considered in their full context, represent the most ethical choice available among imperfect options. The intelligent develop the moral sophistication to distinguish between genuine ethical principles that should guide behavior consistently and conventional moral rules that function more as social coordination mechanisms than as true ethical imperatives. Understanding when adherence to the latter would produce outcomes that violate the former. The psychological challenge of this rule lies in taking necessary actions that conflict with your moral conditioning without experiencing the guilt, self-doubt, or rationalization that typically accompanies such decisions, and that undermines both psychological health and strategic effectiveness. Machiavelli observed that many capable individuals destroyed themselves not through their difficult decisions, but through their inability to integrate those decisions psychologically, either becoming consumed by guilt that paralyzed future action or adopting cynical perspectives that severed them from their actual values and led to increasingly destructive behavior. The intelligent develop what might be called moral resilience. They make difficult decisions when necessary. They accept full responsibility for those decisions and their consequences, and they maintain their core ethical framework without allowing either excessive guilt or defensive rationalization to distort their judgment or corrupt their character. The practical application of this principle begins with accepting that advancement in competitive environments sometimes requires choosing between competing goods or selecting the least harmful among imperfect options, and that refusing to make such choices often produces worse outcomes than making them thoughtfully. This might involve ending relationships that have become obstacles to your advancement, even though the other person has done nothing to deserve such treatment. It might require taking credit for work that truly was collaborative, because the strategic necessity of establishing your reputation exceeds the moral cost of the implicit misrepresentation. It might mean allowing someone else to fail when you could prevent it, because their failure creates opportunities for you that their success would foreclose. Machiavelli recognized that these moments are inevitable for anyone seeking significant advancement, and that pretending otherwise serves only to leave you unprepared when they arrive. The key to maintaining psychological integrity through such decisions lies in 3 practices that Machiavelli would endorse. First, being honest with yourself about the nature and motivation for your actions, rather than constructing elaborate justifications that obscure the reality that you are choosing your advancement over competing values. Second, accepting full responsibility for the consequences of your decisions, rather than blaming circumstances, other people, or claiming you had no choice. And third, maintaining clear boundaries around which ethical principles you will violate under pressure and which remain inviolate regardless of strategic cost, thereby preserving a core of integrity even as you navigate the moral complexity of competitive environments. These practices prevent the descent into genuine amorality while allowing the flexibility necessary to act effectively in situations where simple rule following would produce catastrophic outcomes. Machiavelli would emphasize that this rule does not advocate for casual betrayal, routine deception, or the abandonment of ethical constraints in pursuit of naked self-interest. Rather, it recognizes that the world presents situations where all available choices have moral costs, where you must choose whose interests to serve when you cannot serve everyone's, and where the responsibilities you bear to your own long-term objectives and to those depending on you sometimes conflict with the comfortable moral rules that govern ordinary social interaction. The intelligent develop the judgment to recognize these situations when they arise, the courage to make difficult choices when necessary, and the psychological sophistication to maintain their integrity and effectiveness without being destroyed by guilt or hardened into cynicism by the moral complexity they navigate. The integration of this 7th rule with the previous 6 creates a complete framework for strategic advancement that Machiavelli would recognize as both realistic and psychologically sustainable. You control information strategically while gathering it from others. You appear conventional while acting based on your actual strategic assessment. You develop indispensable capabilities that create dependency. You maintain emotional opacity while reading others accurately. You control your timing rather than being controlled by circumstances. You build relationships based on mutual strategic advantage rather than affection. And you maintain the moral sophistication necessary to make difficult choices when required, while preserving your psychological integrity and core ethical commitments. Together, these 7 rules form an integrated approach to advancement that acknowledges the competitive realities of human organizations while remaining distinct from simple ruthlessness or amoral manipulation. The mastery of all 7 rules simultaneously represents what Machiavelli would consider the achievement of virtue, the combination of capability, judgment, courage, and psychological sophistication that allows an individual to navigate complex competitive environments successfully while maintaining their essential humanity and ethical grounding. This is not the path of the villain or the sociopath, but rather the path of the intelligent and realistic individual who understands that rising in competitive environments requires capabilities and perspectives that most people never develop because they prefer comfortable illusions to uncomfortable truths. Those who master these rules find that their advancement becomes less about luck or external factors and more about the inevitable consequence of superior strategic thinking combined with disciplined execution, positioning them to achieve objectives that remain perpetually out of reach for those who never learn to see the world as it actually functions rather than as they wish it would function. The 8 silent rules that Machiavelli would recognize in the patterns of intelligent ascension stand now revealed before you, not as moral guidelines or inspirational principles, but as the actual operating system that governs how power, influence, and position flow to those who understand these dynamics rather than to those who merely hope for recognition of their virtues or reward for their efforts. What separates these principles from the countless pieces of conventional success advice available everywhere is their grounding in observation of how human systems actually function when stripped of comforting narratives and examined with unflinching clarity. These are not the rules society teaches, because society functions more smoothly when most people remain unaware of them, operating according to principles that make them predictable, manageable, and unlikely to challenge existing hierarchies in sophisticated ways. But for those willing to see beyond these comfortable illusions, the rules offer a framework for understanding why some individuals rise, while others, despite equal or superior talent and effort, remain perpetually overlooked. The challenge you now face is not intellectual, but psychological. Possessing this knowledge changes nothing unless you develop the discipline to apply it consistently, the courage to act on strategic assessment rather than comfortable convention, and the wisdom to integrate these principles into your character rather than wielding them as external techniques you employ when convenient. Machiavelli understood that knowledge without application serves only to make you aware of opportunities you lack the fortitude to pursue, creating a form of suffering perhaps worse than simple ignorance. The intelligent recognize that these rules demand transformation rather than mere implementation, requiring you to reconstruct your relationship with information, with convention, with emotional expression, with timing, with relationships, and with moral complexity in ways that most people actively resist, because such reconstruction forces confrontation with uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world you inhabit. Yet the alternative to this transformation carries its own costs. Costs that compound relentlessly over time as you watch others advance using principles you understood but lacked the discipline to apply consistently. As you experience the frustration of being perpetually outmaneuvered by those with inferior capabilities but superior strategic thinking. And as you gradually recognize that the comfortable moral simplicity you maintained came at the price of genuine agency and influence in shaping your circumstances. Machiavelli would invite you to consider whether the psychological comfort of maintaining conventional perspectives on success, relationships, and advancement actually serves your interests, or whether it simply protects you from the discomfort of acknowledging that the world operates according to principles that conflict with what you were taught to believe. The truly intelligent understand that temporary discomfort in confronting reality proves far less costly than permanent limitation resulting from comfortable delusion. The 8 rules function not as isolated techniques, but as an integrated framework that becomes increasingly powerful as you develop proficiency across all dimensions simultaneously, creating compound effects where mastery of each principle enhances the effectiveness of the others. Your control of information allows better timing. Your emotional opacity makes your dependencies more valuable. Your indispensable capabilities provide freedom to act conventionally in appearance while strategically in substance. And your moral sophistication allows you to maintain psychological integrity while making difficult choices that conventional morality would condemn, but strategic necessity demands. This integration represents what Machiavelli would recognize as the development of true virtue, the combination of capabilities that allows you to navigate competitive environments with effectiveness that appears to others as either remarkable luck or mysterious charisma, when in reality it flows from superior understanding and disciplined application of principles they never learned. The path forward requires no dramatic declarations or sudden transformations, but rather the quiet commitment to begin applying these principles incrementally, learning from each application, refining your judgment through experience, and gradually building the capabilities and positioning that compound over time into undeniable advantage. Machiavelli would recognize that those who achieve lasting ascension do so not through single bold strokes, but through accumulated small advantages that others overlook or dismiss as insignificant, advantages that nevertheless accumulate into positions of influence and security that cannot be easily challenged or removed. If this framework resonates with something you recognize as true, despite its conflict with more comfortable narratives, if you sense that understanding these principles provides explanatory power for patterns you have observed but could not previously articulate, then perhaps you possess the capacity for the clear-eyed realism that these rules require and reward. The question is not whether you understand them intellectually, but whether you possess the discipline and courage to allow them to transform how you operate in the world, accepting the responsibility that comes with such transformation while embracing the agency and effectiveness it creates. Consider sharing this exploration of Machiavellian principles with others who might benefit from understanding how intelligent ascension actually functions rather than how it is commonly portrayed. Leave a comment sharing which of the 8 rules resonates most powerfully with your own observations or challenges your current approach most significantly. And subscribe to continue developing the strategic sophistication that separates those who merely survive competitive environments from those who genuinely rise within them. The conversation continues for those willing to pursue these insights wherever they lead, however uncomfortable that journey might prove, knowing that the alternative of comfortable ignorance ultimately costs far more than the temporary discomfort of seeing clearly.